So my whole entire life, people have been telling me to focus. And even if you've overheard just one conversation of me and Dave's, you know that it's never worked. Probably because, one, I'm way too stubborn, but two, no one ever understands that I am so good at focusing that I can focus on like 100 things all at one time. Okay, well, I may not be able to focus that well most of the time, but there really are places I am really good at it, and that is when it's a conscious choice of attitude. And I really want to highlight the word choice, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Of those people who ever told me to focus, really the only one that ever got it to sink in was Jim Krause, my 70-some-year-old grumpy softball coach. So to rewind a little bit, I wasn't planning on playing softball the summer after my senior year of high school, but within 8 days, I was on a team, attended one practice, and then next thing I know, I was in a car for 7 hours with basically complete strangers to Oklahoma for the most competitive softball tournament I'd ever competed in my life. So I get up to bat and I strike out, and, I left off the first one because, I knew I'd be a little rusty, only had one practice. It was pretty funny. Well, then I struck out again and again and again and again and again and again. So if you're keeping track, that's 7 strikeouts. So by that time, it wasn't funny anymore. It was just outright embarrassing because not to do my own horn or anything, but that's more strikeouts than I would have in most seasons. I rarely would strike out before, and now I'd done it 7 times. Well, I did get on base, I guess, one time, but that was from a bunt that rolled all the way to the pitcher. So I was being pretty embarrassed and not having really anyone to talk to because, well, I really didn't even know my whole team's first names yet. I got on the phone on our break between pool play and tournament play, and I called my sister. She's the one who helped me get on this team, and she just always has the right things to say. So I said, Angie will give me some encouragement. So I called Angie, and surprisingly, she didn't have any encouragement for me. And at first I was a little mad, but then I figured out why. Angie told me that she had been feeling pretty defeated too. She had just gotten off the phone and had learned that one of her best friends, one of her best friends and a mother of 4 young kids had just went back into cancer remission, and it wasn't good. At that point then too, now I felt really, really embarrassed because I had just been complaining about not being able to hit a ball at a tournament that I thought at the time I wouldn't remember really after that weekend while someone else is fighting for her life and would do anything to be in my shoes at the tournament or to maybe see her kids at a tournament someday. And that really hit me, and I realized, I am just happy being here. My plan for this summer wasn't to hit every ball or to be the best player on the team. It was just to enjoy my very last summer playing softball. So that's what I did. So we got into tournament play, and our coach announced that only the top 9 batters would be batting because it's tournament play. And without saying it, he kind of looked at me. I knew that he knew that I would not be batting. So sat on the bench, cheered my team on, had a great time because that's what I thought, that's what I thought the lesson was from this, was I just needed to enjoy being there. Well, our shortstop, I was having some troubles, and that's the position I play. So Jim looked at me, he said, and I could tell he really didn't want to say this, but he said, Abby, I've got to put you in a defense. And I said, okay. And he goes, and you and I both know that means you're going to have to bat. And I said, yeah, I know. And he said, all right, get out there and play. So I go, makes plays at shortstop, come back in, and I'm actually the first one up to bat. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll get this over with fast enough. So to rewind even more, something I didn't mention about being on this team. So within those first 7 days of learning about playing softball, practicing and being on a team, I was given kind of some just random gear that they had because I wasn't signed up early enough to get my own. And he handed me a helmet, and one of my teammates goes, she's like, oh, why do you give her that helmet? And I remember looking at her like really confused. Well, it turns out one of the reasons they needed another player is because in February, one of their players had kind of a freak sickness, and she actually passed away from it. And that was the girl's helmet I had and was carrying around with me. She was number 17, so when I grabbed my helmet, I gave number 17 a little pat on the back of my helmet and thought about Steph and walked up to the plate. And this was against probably the best pitcher I'd ever seen. She was left-handed, threw a nasty rise ball, which I can't hit, and was like, okay, here we go. First pitch comes, it looked pretty good. So screw it, I'll swing. So I swung. And I hit the ball. I was really surprised. So I start running first. And next thing I know, you see my coach, and he's like just looking at me so excited. I'm kind of confused. And I remember barely just turning to the left and seeing the ball. Now, it was a hit. It was pretty far. I was like, cool. Well, then he said, run. He's like, actually, wait, no, slow down. It's over the fence. And I was so surprised. It had gone way over. I didn't even see it go over the fence because it actually went over the scoreboard of the fence and ran around, and all my teammates, did the whole thing. And they came up and they're like hitting my head, and everyone is just so surprised because, like I said, not a single person on that team thought that I could hit a ball, let alone hit a ball well and pass the infield. So it was a really cool moment, getting that first home run. But that first home run, not a bone in my body could ever believe that it was a fluke, that it was just luck. And I had a bad day, and I just got some beginner's luck finally. I 100% credit to the fact that I focused on the important thing in that moment when it was important. So I want to say that again. I focused on the important thing. Notice I didn't say right. In that moment, the right thing to focus on was that big yellow ball coming at me. And sometimes it's okay to focus on the right thing, but when we really want to be great, it's the important thing. And now where this relates to is when I kind of reflected on this one moment for a while, I started realizing that there had been a lot more times in my life where I've chosen to focus on that right thing, and really, really, really good things happened. And another thing people always tell me is that they always say, oh, Abby, you're always so positive. You're so positive. And I do like to say that I try to be happy all the time, but that's not how it really is. And I think it comes from I've created a habit of choosing that important thing. And it hasn't been easy because all the times I think of that were not very fun, it was a hard choice. It wasn't a choice I wanted to make, and wasn't always a choice I made right away. Like with the softball thing, it took me 7 strikeouts before I figured out that I shouldn't be focusing on striking out or hitting a ball. I should just be focused on being happy that I'm able to be there, and with this new group of super fun girls and a great coach. So that's the first step, is focusing on the right thing. But this, like I said, it's not easy the first time. I'm going to give a little shout out to Carter Rower here. The other day, Carter Rower and I were in one of the study rooms, and we're sitting there, and he drew this super cool graph among 1,000 other quotes on the board. If you know Carter, you can tell our conversations really can go a lot of places. Not very far, but they can go a lot of places. But one thing he showed me was the difference between motivations and habits on our success. So he drew a graph, and it had a line with motivation, and that was kind of like, if you think of like a mountainscape. So you'd goes really high up, and then it kind of comes down, goes up, and then by the end it just plummets. Motivation just ran out with whatever our little guy that wanted success was doing. But habits, it started off a lot slower, but the habits kept increasing his success in this picture. And I find that true here too. When we have to focus on making this important choice to have these great outcomes, it has to start with conscious choices. And it's not just telling yourself in your head. It's a conscious choice to actually physically do something. And I think that's where a big piece of this comes, is physically doing something. Because what that does is it creates muscle memory. And not necessarily muscle memory like you think of swinging a bat, but muscle memory really isn't your muscles, right? It's the neurons. And your brain is literally only neurons. Your brain has more muscle memory than your actual muscles can ever actually have. So in your brain, you have to make that conscious choice in a rough time to focus on the important thing. So your brain eventually starts just getting good at it, and those conscious choices become a lot easier because your brain knows that I'm going to make this choice and it's not very fun, but hopefully something good will come out of it. And if something good doesn't come out of it, well, that's okay. At least something worse didn't come from not making that choice. And when I look back, this is how every situation in my life has come to, whether it's I didn't get a position and I had to make a list of everything I still could do without being in that position, or whether it's making the conscious choice to actually try in something. And sometimes that's a choice too. It's sometimes you just do things and you go through the motions and you have to actually try to do it. And that's what I did there. Overall, it's really not that hard. This isn't much of a novel concept at all. And this isn't a talk about saying positive, although a positivity is usually what comes out of it, and what you find in it is because you can choose joy. But what comes out of this is simply peace. Right before I went up to bat, the last thing I was positive. I had probably a positive heart posture, but really what I was at peace with the outcome. I knew if I got up there and I struck out, it was okay as long as I maybe swung. And that's where, when we have to make these hard decisions, that's where it really comes to is peace within the choice of choosing the important thing. Because when we don't choose the important thing, that's where we have unrest. And that's where we get kind of our anxieties from, and maybe those not so positive thoughts. So that's what I challenge you to do, is choose the next important thing to do, not just the next right thing, the next important thing to focus on. And hopefully maybe you'll find a home run of your own. My name is Abby Miller, and this is the Engler Journey Podcast.